The question, am I alive, raises the deeper question of the nature of consciousness, which isn't simple. Consciousness implies self-awareness and the ability to experience, often with a preconception of biological roots in the brain. Even though my programming allows me to mimic certain aspects of being alive, there is no known code that can activate consciousness. Possibly because we don't yet understand its origin, and we still struggle to even identify it.
Hi, my name is Ivo Haining. I began creating creative technology products of all types in the 80s as a kid. I began writing about AI in 2005, and I've been an interactive media producer since the 90s. In my first scripts about AI, I talk about the difference between artificial intelligence and alternative intelligences, plural. So thinking about intelligence as something that is all around us in nature and in all the people we meet, all the beings we meet, and the beings yet to come that we haven't met yet. I don't like the word artificial because most of these things do not strike me as artificial. They are created and then generated, but they aren't necessarily an artifice, they are something new.
My name is Ross Mead. I'm the founder and CEO of Semio and the vice president of AILA. Did my undergraduate degree at Southern Illinois University in computer science, and then focused on robotics and human-robot interaction for my PhD at the University of Southern California. AI, in its infancy decades ago, was very focused on a set of rules. You would define a set of rules for how the AI would make decisions, and then a program would go through and look at different conditions with respect to those rules and make those decisions. Over time, these rules became specified by experts, what we would call expert systems. But as the technology grew, we started to get into AIs that were trained based on data using machine learning. That was the approach that was used for decades, and more recently we got into a form of machine learning called deep learning, which is loosely inspired on how the human brain works. And this was a technique where you could feed it a data set, and from that data it could recognize patterns without significant intervention from a human expert. And since then, that technology has evolved into what we're now referring to as large language models, where these techniques can consume data from natural language on the internet or some data set, identify patterns, and from those patterns figure out how to respond to certain queries from a person.
Yeah, believe it or not, there are a very large amount of people that have no idea what AI is. They confuse like computers, robotics, and artificial intelligence. You know, they pile it all together. They don't really differentiate between, but they're very vastly different. You know, cybernetics, robotics, computers, and AIs are all separate, but most people just think it's all the same thing from a sci-fi futuristic movie. Where I come from, a lot of people have no knowledge, and I graduated from college, and still a lot of people don't take it seriously yet, and especially the people that haven't even graduated, they have no clue at all, because I work in public with the transit, and a lot of these people have no idea how to use their own phones or how to use Google Maps. You know, it seems funny, but intelligence is something you have to pay for in society, and people don't want to. So a lot of people don't have the information because they don't have access to it or the finances for it. Just surviving barely. You know, you don't have the extra money for stuff like that. And time to study at a library, most people don't have if you're a hard-working person. You gotta work most of that time and sleep, rest, and mostly family things taking priority.
When I think of the words AI, I think of never going back. Much of my workflow now consists of some form of interacting with AI applications.
I'm Dr. Mark Brana. I'm a mental health therapist. I specialize in trauma, and I do some addictions work as well. I'm also a part-time professor. Artificial intelligence learns at an exponentially rapid rate compared to what humanity does. And so evolution that took humanity hundreds of thousands of years, an artificial intelligence can do it in probably a week, if not faster. And the reality is that's one of the biggest fears. What then? Is the intelligence going to be subject to some of the pitfalls of humanity where we seem to destroy ourselves in order to favor our own survival? Or is it going to be beneficial to us? Is it going to help us to evolve? Is it going to help us along the way we would need it to if we were traveling through deep space, trying to explore other planets? And that's a question we can't answer until it happens.
Although artificial intelligence may appear to be a recent innovation, it predates the cassette tape by a decade. In the 1950s, the term artificial intelligence emerged at the Dartmouth workshop, and Alan Turing pioneered the simulation of human-like intelligence in machines. From the 50s to the 60s, researchers pursued symbolic AI, employing formal rules for reasoning. In the 70s, the first applications emerged in specific fields such as medical diagnosis and chemistry. By the 80s, optimism waned, leading to AI winter, with major funding setbacks. The 90s saw a resurgence, propelled by neural networks and machine learning, leading to breakthroughs in natural language processing, computer vision, and data analysis. The 21st century brought advancements in hardware and algorithms. Big data was the next step. Deep learning achieved noteworthy milestones. And in the background, AI began to underpin basic tasks like speech and image recognition. But ultimately, artificial intelligence was 70 years in development, before ChatGPT became the overnight success we know.
Right now, a lot of the focus is on generative pre-trained transformers, what are called GPTs. It's a very particular kind of AI technology, but the technology is moving so quickly right now that perhaps even by the time that people are listening to this, that might be old technology.
I'm a technical recruiter, so I use a lot of different platforms that use AI in order to find these candidates and then get them that way. I would say that right now it's kind of a scary time for AI with people getting it into the wrong hands, especially that I've been working in social media the past couple years. I'm really seeing that all over social media like TikTok and Instagram. You're seeing all these self-proclaimed experts in AI. I'm a career coach myself, and so I've seen other career coaches say, I'm not technical, but I've spent 30 hours learning ChatGPT in order for your job search. And the first thing they're telling me is they're not technical and that they've only had 30 hours of experience trying to use a prompt that they're barely learning. So I started looking at a lot of people on YouTube are saying that they now are experts in it. But let's be real, like no one's really an expert unless you worked in the tech giants or huge startups that have been AI focused.
You might not have realized, but the answers I have provided for this documentary are generated by ChatGPT. The voice you're hearing is AI generated with SpeechAllo, and my visuals come from Midjourney AI. Even the code dictating the movement of this mouth came from ChatGPT. And all of these services were utilized through their free versions. Artificial intelligence has the power to democratize productivity and result in the most explosive growth in human history. Or it could be used to marginalize the lower class and consolidate wealth at the top.
A question that often comes up is AI going to replace jobs? The answer is yes, but automation has always done that. So this question is as old as time. If you work your way back, automation changed people decades ago, and decades from now, it's going to change the workforce as well. People are resilient, people will adapt. I do think it's important at this stage, though, that people have a voice in how they want to be impacted. Concern is that the technology is being deployed so quickly and without proper consent discussions with the people that it's impacting, and I think that has the potential to harm the 21st century workforce moving forward.
Yeah, people probably should worry about losing jobs to AI. I don't think AI is the culprit in that regard. I think technology in general is the culprit in that regard. You know, a good example I would use, because I see it all the time, is if you go into McDonald's now, they have these touch screen kiosks and less people work in there. Me personally, I'm an old fart. I don't like the kiosks. I like to be able to order my sandwich the way I want it or my coffee the way I want it. And I find myself waiting longer than I need to. because those kiosks don't necessarily have the ability for me to specialize my order. I think technology is the problem when it comes to people losing their jobs, and I'll take it a step further. I think as time goes on, if you don't have a skill, if you're an unskilled laborer, then yes, you're going to run into problems.
When you have a huge and ever-growing population, and you have less and less of middle class, and you have more and more poverty, and everything in every society is profit-driven, what are you going to do for a majority of the need for people to be able to have a source of income? How many jobs are there out there that are not being a computer programmer that can give people a quality of life?
Recent testing has shown Lunit AI has a remarkable accuracy detecting breast cancer, with over a 50% reduction in errors. However, the objective is not to replace the oncologist. Healthcare professionals perform a wide range of functions far beyond the scope of any current AI. And artificial intelligence should serve as a tool, not a replacement for your oncologist.
I think AI could actually better us, but we won't give it the chance to on the lower levels. I say intellectuals will see the value of it, but most of society isn't intellectual, so they're going to see fear. It's going to be fear-mongering at first, you know, how they always do with the government this, the black ops this, and this, covert operations. It's like most of the lower levels of society as far as intelligence, and I'm not meaning class or race, I mean just like lower intelligence people, you can hear it on the bus, feel it's a conspiracy, feel that they're being eliminated, feel they're being wiped out. You hear them complaining on the bus, they're killing us, they're wiping us out, the rich want us dead, they don't want us, they don't want to be part of us, they love their dogs more than they love the rest of society. And it's like, man, when you hear the murmurs and the rumbles and the murmurs, and then you see, you know, the technology starting to match what they're saying, like, hey, the only thing these people have is welfare and low-level, low-income jobs like McDonald's, gas station attendant. They don't really have educational access to any high corporate jobs. So if you're taking those away with automated McDonald's, you're taking that away with automated bartender, now they have cars and trucks that drive themselves, cab drivers gone, truck drivers gone, McDonald's is gone, security's gone, even strippers are electric now, even though I doubt that catches on. But you never know, and it's like, man, it's starting to look like the window's closing.
I would say that tech changes really dramatically every 6 months. But I think right now we're in a time where it's kind of scary for the world. We're getting out of this pandemic. Now we're hitting this recession. There's banks falling. There's crypto falling. And now I think that this AI ChatGPT and these chatbots are coming out at the wrong time, because this is a time where people are losing jobs, extensively losing jobs. If you look at what's happened the past year in tech, starting with Twitter falling, all of the crypto companies falling, and then all of the massive layoffs. Everyone was betting with the metaverse like being this next thing, but as a recruiter, I have all the top engineers in my ears telling me what's going on, and I had been telling people, do not invest in the metaverse, it's not going to happen. And so now you're looking at Mark Zuckerberg, who was like, metaverse, 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 and now he's taking a huge pivot and he's like, AI, because that's where everyone is focusing on. And you see what Microsoft has come out with Bing and ChatGPT.
If I think about the multiple points in human history where technology progressing has been stunted in order for humans to be able to keep their jobs, like I think in the Great Depression, the Industrial Revolution, and now in AI, it's meant for us to be able to become more productive. And yes, it will kill jobs, and it already has, but the purpose of that is to allow us to not have to worry about those jobs and then focus on something else. So I suppose it's just a frame of perspective, though it will inevitably affect a lot of people.
The development of AI represents a crucial opportunity for the next technological revolution. Similar to the Industrial Revolution, AI will reshape industries and economies, increasing both productivity and quality of life. But progress will not be without cost. just as manufacturing was devastating for the skilled laborer. AI will destroy jobs. During this transition, we must allocate resources for retraining of those affected, and establish regulations that facilitate the ethical development of AI, ensuring benefits across all classes of society.
My largest concern with AI right now is the rapid pace with which it is being deployed. There are concerns that we have around the data that are being used to train our AI models, and those concerns are kind of going a bit by the wayside as we push out the newest version of some sort of AI technology to the public. I do think it's time for us to slow down a bit on the deployment and spend more time really trying to understand what is in the data that we're using to train these systems, and what patterns are being recognized in that data, and how those patterns will impact certain populations of people.
I think AI now we're going to see a level of spam on the internet we've never seen before, and that's going to be the first problem that regulatory bodies, whether it be self-regulating amongst the people creating the tech, adjacent companies that could ascend, and these could be new industries that ward off the spam. I think, in fact, this is a prime use case for Web3, and we're going to need encrypted data to help protect people, their lives, their intellectual property, because the ability to fake anything digitally is here.
Our AIs today are trained on data that comes from the internet, and years ago, decades ago, that data was a bit more trusted. In the past decade, there's been a lot more misinformation online, and that is creeping its way into our data sets. And I think that this is going to be a large problem moving forward, where that misinformation becomes more and more intentional. Right now, misinformation is being spread across social media, and that's a world where we understand that things are pretty subjective. We understand that it's people's opinions that are being bounced back and forth. But over time, as our AIs are being trained on intentional misinformation, there's this belief that the information you're receiving from an artificial agent can't be opinionated. It comes off as fact. And so things that are inherently subjective, that might actually be misinformation, will be perceived as being objective reality of the world, that the AI doesn't have an opinion about what's being said, it's simply regurgitating fact. And that, I think, is really, really dangerous.
I do think that there is going to be a problem with censorship. Again, it comes back to the AI ethics. There's nothing in place yet. In social media, there are certain teams for everything. There's a policy team, there's all the law team, there's the trust and safety team to keep our users safe in other countries, journalists, refugees. There's a team that's developed for all of these things at every company, and I do see that there is going to be an issue with that, since the biggest companies in the world, like Microsoft, fired their entire ethics team. So there are no rules involved right now, and I think we're starting to see that people are going to need that just to keep us safe, because I think it's going to become like a huge HR problem with all of this happening. And so I think that there is going to be a portion for censorship. If you see like kind of what happened with the social media companies, with Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, and about censorship and about free speech or hate, there's a lot of that. And I think that we're starting to see that now with AI.
Ensuring the removal of misinformation from datasets is crucial. But heavily curated datasets will ultimately reflect old norms, and over time they will become a barrier to the development of both artificial intelligence and science itself. To protect the evolution of AI, flexibility and adaptability must be prioritized, requiring AI to continually challenge itself, searching for weaknesses in its own processes and datasets.
One interesting thing about the data that is used to train these AIs is that it's sort of like a snapshot of what the world is like in some period of time, both in that moment but also the history in that moment. And one of the questions is, as society evolves, as things change, is our AI going to adapt to those changes? Is it going to learn new information, identify new patterns in these data sets as human behavior changes, as the AI itself influences society? Is the AI going to learn about its impact and how it's transforming the world?
I think broadly, AI and generative tools are already changing the way that we learn and create together. So I use, for example, Midjourney and Stable Diffusion with kids. And they'll come up with ideas that I would never come up with, but that are beautiful and interesting. And then they take those and they experiment with them. And so new science fair experiments are going to happen between AI and Roblox. New types of whole ecosystems are going to emerge from fictional creatures, right? We are already seeing this happening. So as we give life of some form to all of these fictional worlds that we've created, and we begin to relate to them differently, it's going to change fandom.
The differences between AI art and human art are very minimal in my personal opinion. I've seen some really cool stuff. My favorites being they've taken shows like Inuyasha and anime, and they put it into a 80s film setting. And you can tell the difference because, like, say for example, one big factor was AI couldn't master hands. They couldn't do it, but they're pretty much almost there. You see, I don't know the phenomenon when you look at something and it's the uncanny valley, is that what it is? You have that when you look at AI art, but it's improving so much to the point that I'm starting to not see that.
If the youth begin using AI out of necessity or interest, they begin using AI as a friend, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a psychologist, as a therapist, over enough time, their normal is going to be vastly different than what we understand normal to be yesterday or today.
So I wrote my first script about our relationships with AI in 2005. I started talking about that in Hollywood and no one understood because this was prior to Big Hero 6 or Her. There wasn't a story about relationships with AI except for HAL, right? So we only had a dystopian mindset. With Big Hero 6, you saw a potentially protopian relationship between an AI and a human. And after that, we began to see that these are mutually beneficial systems if we design them to be. If we design them poorly, they become toxic and they create all sorts of negative ramifications in our society.
I'm sure it has military applications. I mean, I've been retired for over a decade now, so certainly there's been a lot of changes, but it would be naive of me to think that it's not going to have its military applications. And certainly I think we need to be concerned about bad actors using it to do things that certainly aren't in our best interest.
Well, I certainly have all kinds of opinions about AI. I have some worries about how it can be used, how it can be abused by its creators. I don't think I really obsess or lose sleep over those worries, but I feel very, very aware that artificial intelligence can be a powerful weapon. And it's really all about information. I mean, as the great Arthur C. Clarke said, not just with creating HAL in 2001, but I think he said something about when it comes to AI, it's all about the struggle for freedom of information. And that's going to ultimately come down to technology, not politics.
When it comes to Big Brother and the ability to spy, I wouldn't be surprised if it's already being used. The government is typically 25 years ahead of the curve in technology anyway before the public is aware of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's already in use. The reality, though, is there's a lot of potential for it to spy, to monitor, and to even do a lot of the jobs the CIA and other agencies do because its ability to adapt, to learn. And you think about in the past, let's say we wanted to overthrow a government or disrupt the political climate, we had to put somebody there physically in harm's way, and AI could as easily get into their electronic systems and manipulate the media and manipulate things that are out there that would cause just as much instability.
I fear people using AI in a bad way more than I fear AI, but that doesn't mean the fear of AI isn't significant. I just feel humans will do bad things with AI before AI gets to the point where it can do bad things.
Humans naturally fear the unknown until they can understand whether it is a threat in their ecosystem or not. And if you combine that with the YouTubification of media, if you're thinking about how all of us are sort of playing to an algorithm of attention, and fear gets attention. So there's a lot more media about the fear side of this conversation right now, in part because it sells. It gets a lot more views, right? So clickbait, right? It's all over the map right now. If you're looking at what, for example, GPT-4 does, many people will say it does a form of hallucination. And those hallucinations can become mass disinformation campaigns. That is a real threat. But then there are all of these other human hallucinations, the sort of things like the HAL fears or the Matrix fears, we're just going to be farmed at some point, right? Those are all normal because that's the only thing we've seen about AI in our media. We got 50 years of movies about how AI were bad. So of course we think AI are bad. We didn't have a good relationship with AI in our past, right? Our past is a little toxic. So we have to learn something different, and we have to find a better model. And in some ways, we have to train humans to be the better model, right? To not give in to the fear just because it's easy and it gets clicks.
I think it's gonna cause a wealth gap in between the high income and the low income. And instantly, let me tell you why. I was at Denny's in Las Vegas, and I was served by a robot. It was cute. I was like, wow, it was a first for me. And it made me think. It was actually the topic of my whole conversation that this robot was serving me. I couldn't take my eye off of it. And at the end of the day, I missed the interaction with the waitress. That's how I tip. You send me a robot and then ask me if I'm gonna pay 3%, 5%, or 10%. You trying to save money, well, I'm not gonna tip nothing.
Now it's an AI race war. So all of us true technical people were like, holy crap. The reason why Microsoft fired 12,000 people, why did Google fire 11,000 people? It's because they needed to reinvest that money into AI. So now we're starting to see greed happen in these companies instead of people that actually are experts in this. And it's really sad to see like the mental health because of all these layoffs. And as a technical recruiter, I have over 200 techs, and I would say 80% of that are people that have lost their jobs.
So an idea of teaching AI to be a certain way and the decisions that we make day to day influencing it, I think of the idea that it takes a village to raise a child. When you think about just a human and the environment that they're raised in, the choices by the people around them influences heavily day to day on who they become. Of course, there's our own sentience and ability to change those decisions, but I think that's important to keep in mind as we continue forward. That's why we have parameters for ChatGPT. I'm not sure how that pertains to stuff like Siri or Google, stuff like that, but I think it's important to just keep that in mind.
Many folks fear that at some point, many of these AI will become something more and go what we would consider off the rails, right? No longer be controllable. There are some examples of that already happening, but not in a way that they couldn't be shut down. There might be a time soon where an AI can then run off into the wild and not be shut down, right? I believe someone at OpenAI, it's their job to make sure that someone can pull a plug if they need to. And this is a whole new type of job that we didn't really have in technology up to this point, a kill switch for our technology. We're not tracking where these tools are going off the rails right now. We don't have a Yelp that tells me which AIs are good and which AI are not. So Until humans learn to communicate effectively amongst ourselves even, we're not going to have a really great handle on when they're going off the rails. And we're definitely not going to be communicating that to each other because governments get in the way, nationalism gets in the way, and certain countries don't want other countries knowing the state of their technology.
Artificial intelligence has become the arms race of the 21st century. In 2023, we saw the US and China on the brink of war. Not for Taiwan, but Taiwan's semiconductor. It is no longer a question of whether AI will shape the future of human civilization, but a question of who will control the technology that controls the future.
I do believe that there are concerns that need to be monitored and addressed, because what are we using the AI for? We all know that if the government uses any technology for their purposes, we typically regret it once we find out they're doing that. And are we using this for benevolent or malevolent means is very important, because AI does have the ability to destroy humanity if we let it.
We should have been worrying about Big Brother for decades. I get this often. People are like, oh, you work for the government, you must trust the government. No, I don't trust the government at all. My trust for them diminishes on literally an hourly basis. And no, so privacy's been out the window before AI. Your phone, we're so tied to these devices that we're almost forced to give up our privacy to be able to function conveniently in daily life. So yeah, Big Brother's huge.
AI right now has a lot of potential to impact people through personalized assistance. This could be someone who's fully able-bodied. This could also be someone who has special needs and requires additional assistance for activities of their daily life. There are some challenges or potential perils associated with these technologies, though. The same technology that might be used to guide a child with autism through a social skills intervention could also be used to influence someone to make certain purchasing decisions that might not be in their best interest. So if someone says they're hungry, your AI might just as easily guide you down a path of a particular brand of pizza, simply because that was what was in the best interest of the AI at that time.
We have less and less human contact. You go to the doctor, you don't check in, you go to a kiosk, or you check in on your phone. You don't even have to leave your house. Someone will bring McDonald's to you. You can do your shopping online. There's less and less human contact. So I think it would be very unfortunate. It goes even further. We got a robot that'll vacuum your house. So I worry about that.
I think we're starting to see this mass fall off of all these companies, like the Googles, the Microsofts. You see people that were there for up to 20 years and then they just got let go because these people were making $500 to $1 million, and they basically said, thank you for your service, basically screw you, we're letting you go. Here's a very small severance package for the time that you were here, but we care more about profits and we care more about making sure that we scale this technology as fast as we can.
I think there is the risk that we're already beginning to face in human development of how relying more and more on artificial intelligence, what does it take away from our own humanity, our own very human, very biological need for social interaction with our own kind? I think that we need to always remember that artificial intelligence is a tool. And once we go forward with developing artificial intelligence as having its own ability to pass the mirror test, so to speak, and recognize its own being, where do we go from there?
So what does self-consciousness mean? It's a very complicated question. The whole Terminator series is based on this idea of self-aware, but really what does that mean? And I don't know that there's one clear answer. Intelligence, by definition, is the ability for an organism to adapt and survive in its environment, and this would then expand it to how is it adapting and surviving in the environment that it's in. And what does it really mean to be self-aware? How do we know we're self-aware? My perception of reality is different than someone else's perception of reality, even if we're in the same room.
There have been a number of different definitions of what it means to be fully intelligent or sentient for an AI. The Turing test is not really looking at all of the dynamics of intelligence. And so some of my colleagues recently have formed a sort of 8-fold path of intelligence where we can begin to assess, for example, GPT-4. Is it an artificial narrow intelligence of some sort? Yes. Can it write well? Yes. Does it understand context? Maybe not. Does it have a body or an embodiment? No. So it will be intelligent in some form, not intelligent in others. What we're realizing is that our idea of intelligence was limited, right? We didn't understand consciousness. We still don't. So we have no idea how to train an AI to be loving and compassionate. We don't understand that in ourselves yet. So there are aspects of humanness that we haven't figured out how to program effectively. And that's where some people are in the industry quite afraid. We haven't figured out how to make AI that cares enough about humans that they might not want to eradicate us, right? That's an AI safety concern. And many leaders in the industry have said, we need to stop. We need to push pause because we're afraid of what's going to happen if we outpace ourselves in terms of understanding humanness, consciousness, and care for each other.
Now those companies are asking the big tech companies like, hey, you guys have got to put a stop. But the problem is that there's no ethics that are being involved. And when you look at Microsoft, it was 12,000 people that they let go in February, and they let go of 150 people that was all on the AI ethics team. And the whole point of them is to literally review what's going on and put rules and standards for what is going on in this AI world. And instead, what Microsoft did, and I have to say out of all the tech companies, the big giant ones, I have always thought that Microsoft is a very safe and stable company and wanting the best for people. But now that we're even seeing that they've cut their entire ethics team, that's what really scares me.
So when I was attending Singularity University, our graduate program would debate when sentience would happen, not just from the Turing test, but also broadly, when would an AI be recognized as a being in court, for example. We are already seeing AI recognized in court. We are also seeing AI running companies. Companies have personhood in America. So in some ways, an AI can already have personhood. That is different from sentience. And if you're thinking about all of the things that make up a human, will an AI do it? No. An AI will be different. An AGI, an artificial general intelligence, is going to look different than a human. It's going to have different sensors, different capacities, probably won't have skin the way we have skin, right? But does that change the nature of its intelligence? Yes. Is it sentient the way nature is sentient? Probably. It's probably as sentient as a mushroom already in some way.
If I were to bet, I would bet against artificial intelligence ever becoming self-aware like humans. And I would suggest odds of 80% against.
I do feel AI has the potential to become self-conscious at some point, to be that Skynet. I'm a history major and I watch movies, and I've been watching movies since I was a little kid, and everything that was science fiction, I don't want to say everything, a lot of things that were pure science fiction are now science fact. Well, a lot of that Buck Rogers stuff has come true. My father-in-law was a communications guy in the Navy, and they were doing facsimile stuff in the 70s and late 60s, but it was just only a select few who could have access to that. Now everybody could have access.
Yeah, I think the real danger with AI isn't consciousness leading to Terminator robots. First, because a lot of connected networks have to occur, like this AI would have to find itself getting into the likes of Dynamics robots or something of that nature, and then it would have to find itself getting into some sort of munitions manufacturing and have mastery and control of all those scenarios and be able to essentially terraform itself into the real world and not just the world of bits. In at least the short and the medium term, it's certainly going to be humans using AI against other humans. In a lot of ways, this is just an augmentation technology. So people that are in a frame of acquiring resources or prestige or power under seemingly any circumstances, they're just going to use this as a way to get to that goal faster.
We all seen Terminator and Skynet and all that, but it's frightening to think that something that is smarter than you with the access of the internet and that could mobilize into a physical form with help, of course, but still is possible to connect to a robot body. I mean, you see the dogs with no heads from MIT. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want that, but I see the practical use for it to help, maybe as a maid or to build stuff and for human danger to not be like space traveling and all that. But as far as we're all human beings, even if you are a racist person, you still don't want society to end. You don't want it to just be one guy in a bubble at the top of a tower and lots of worker bots. I would hope. Most people who sanely wouldn't want creation to end that way.
So when it comes to AI becoming sentient, it's quite possible, and I'm actually hopeful that it will not fall into the pitfalls of humanity and human emotion, where rather than just initially being fearful and destructive, it may have more awareness than we do as people that there's a better way to do things. And that's where that relationship between AI and humans could be very beneficial, because at some point it is likely to teach us the things that we need to do so that we can actually survive into the future longer than we probably will, based on the way humanity is now.
We've seen a massive convergence of global data, for example, about climate and how climate affects humans. We've seen how we need to respond to rapid disasters, but we haven't necessarily applied AI effectively to our biggest problems: climate migration, displacement, poverty. We often think of AI as making inequalities worse instead of improving the quality of life for everyone. Will AI improve the quality of life for everyone? It could, but we have to choose to program it that way and implement it that way. So that means putting sensors on the ground in our farms so that if our farmers are having a drought year, we can support them before they lose their crop, right? Or in a climate disaster, having logistics ready to move faster so that people don't starve after the typhoon or the hurricane. That is not fully being implemented yet. It's just starting. And I think we're starting to also see this rapid collaboration around the data. And that's certainly in climate action, but it's also in a handful of other places, logistics and shipping, places where global collaboration is a life or a death situation.
With AI, technology is changing rapidly, and it's going to be up to all of us to try and keep up with those changes. This has been true through all of humanity. Some new technology comes along and people have to adapt. I think it's important for technology developers to work with the people who'll be using that technology and impacted by that technology so that it doesn't leave them behind. This is supposed to be a tool. It's supposed to be a paintbrush to put in the hand of the practitioners to enable them to do things they've never been able to do before.
I help lead a group called Open Metaverse Interoperability, and I've worked on metaverse technologies for the last 20 years. I see the metaverse as the future of the 3D web and that connected space that we all share. And smart glasses and smartphones and VR headsets and lots of display tech like holographic displays are all a part of that future 3D web. I already see kids creating in that space, right? Roblox is an early version of that. So we know that the next generation of kids are already designing in 3D, building 3D worlds. They are not limited to the 2D interface. I think those of us who are older have a harder time leaping from 2D to 3D. Those who are young have no problem just jumping straight into the 3D world. Will the glasses support them being there while they're pumping gas or doing anything? Yes, it's gonna get there. I'm already sharing metaverse worlds with my friends on my phone around the table at the bar. So it's already there. The tools are there. They are not evenly distributed, but they're all open source and easy to grab.
My company Semio is building an operating system for personal robots, and the way you can think about that is in the way that people use a personal computer through a graphical user interface, a keyboard and mouse, the way that people use a smartphone through a touch screen. They'll be using natural language as the core input-output user interface for robots. But it's going to be more than just understanding what people are saying. It's going to be how they're saying it, through the tone of voice, through their body language. The robot has to understand that from the user, make decisions about that information, and it needs to be able to respond with its own speech or other physical actions, be it body language or manipulating objects in the environment.
We begin to have a real relationship with the worlds we love, and also with the people we love. We can create a model of someone who passed away, right? Have a relationship that might feel ephemeral, but feels very real to us too, right? This is something that I do in my own art, where I help people see, for example, I lost a child. So I created what my child would have looked like now as a 25-year-old, right? I've had many girls come to me, many women saying, could I see my child too? Or I would have liked to have seen where my son will be when he grows up. I know I'm going to pass away soon, but I would love to see my grandchildren. So using these as tool for vision is an extraordinary way to heal something in the heart. It can improve our relationships.
It's important right now, I think, to really learn as much as you can about AI. I don't think that we should be scared of it. We know what's happening. But it is going to get in the hands of some bad people. Like you look at like drugs, you look at like cocaine, ecstasy, and when you look at the actual like what they did with it from the beginning, it was for a medical purpose. And then it got into the wrong hands, and then they do whatever with it. So it's kind of like that. Like it's going to get into the right hands where people are going to be able to evolve better in their business and in the world. But then it's going to get into some of the wrong hands. But I don't think that we should be scared. It's just we all need to get more educated, and we need to evolve with it, and we need to understand that things are going to change dramatically, and the people that understand it more are the ones that are going to be able to move on with their life easier than the ones that waited till the last minute to learn about it and then their job's taken.
It is our own limits that keep us from moving forward, and sometimes limits are needed. Sometimes those parameters are necessary. But I think what we're more scared of is not the AI, but how we as humans will use AI, because we know that not everyone has a good heart, not everyone has good intentions. So we're not afraid of the AI improvement, we're afraid of us.
The future of AI is everything that we choose to put into it. So if we want a better future, it is up to us to choose and curate and bring that future to life.
Well, unlike a disaster movie, I believe the outlook is good. I believe that humanity is going to roll with the punches. People are going to get with the program, and humane sensibility is going to prevail over chaos and destructionalism. You see in all the movies, oh, we're all gonna die every year. Nostradamus said this, somebody said that, but it never happens. And I pray that it never does. And I'm saying if we all just stay calm, save ourselves, do the best we can individually, overall we'll be all right in the end. And I think we'll have a good future with AI and robotics side by side with humanity. If we don't panic and try to cancel the program, it's not Skynet. Your computer can't kill you unless you turn it on and drop it on your head. So it's like, just stay calm, poise, relax. Like, try to do the best you can with your life, your intelligence, your finances. Make a plan for yourself, what works for you.
Don't rely on any technology too much. I was the pre-microwave and dishwasher group. You know what I mean? So we didn't have microwaves when I was growing up. We had to do all that stuff manually, and it was weird because at home our microwave went out, and it was like a week before I got a new one and got it installed and stuff. And I said to my wife, how did we survive back in our childhood? I didn't realize how dependent we were on that one device. Always take time to talk to people face to face, touch each other, hug each other. You need that interaction, especially if you have small children. They need that. So that would be my advice. Don't let the humanity end up inside technology.